Once More Thrift Store in Clinton, we rely on your donations so we can help those in our community. So this month, if you bring us a donation, you'll get a card for 10% off your next purchase. Look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and DeWittDailyNews.com.
DeWittDailyNews.com is the area's leading local news source 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Get the latest local news, obituaries, police blotter, weather forecast, and more with no paywall. Head to DeWittDailyNews.com to get the local information you need to know.
Breathing problems can affect every aspect of your life. Breathe easier with Gibson Area Hospital Pulmonology Clinic and Dr. Ismail Bobat, now providing pulmonology health services to DeWitt County at Warner Hospital in Clinton. Dr. Bobat is an expert at identifying and treating pulmonology health conditions. Get the right diagnosis and treatment for your breathing problem with an experienced pulmonologist. For healthier breathing, book an appointment in Clinton today. Call 217-784-2212.
We value your trust in us. This is Scott Baum from Baum Chevrolet Buick here in Clinton. Yes, our goal is to earn your trust each and every day. That's why we have prices posted for each car, truck, and SUV, new or used, on our lot, or on our website. Currently, we have a great selection of new and used Silverados priced to move in 1,500, 2,500, or 3,500s. Come see us and all our inventory. Baum Chevrolet Buick. We want to be your trusted transportation option. BaumChevyBuick.com, right from the start.
Serve Pro of Piatt DeWitt counties for fire and water restoration, reconstruction, and now duct cleaning to keep your air healthy. Find out how they can help you by clicking their icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Netflix buffering, YouTube spinning, devices not connecting, Zoom calls dropping. It's frustrating. Let's end your frustration by signing up for fiber internet in Clinton. Click the Connexus icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois. WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. We've got a host of administrators from the Clinton School District in studio with us today as we follow up the Tuesday night Clinton Board of Education meeting. Superintendent Drew Goebel is always with us. Good morning, Mr. Goebel.
Morning, Seth.
Thanks for coming out. And we've got Kara Jensen, who is the curriculum director for the district. Good morning, Kara. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Thanks for coming out. And Jessica Patrick is the principal of Lincoln and Douglas Schools. Hi, Mrs. Patrick.
Good morning.
Well, thanks for coming out, guys, and talking with us. And for folks out there, probably a big change out of last night's Clinton Board of Education meeting. We are going to restructure Lincoln and Douglas Schools. Mrs. Patrick, swing that mic over to you. Tell us what is going on with this.
There's a lot going on. It's a lot of exciting changes, but still changes nonetheless. A lot of things that we're excited and passionate about. So as you know, I joined the Douglas and Lincoln team, the administrative team, last year. So I spent a lot of time last year just learning about the district, the needs of the buildings. So we had a couple of conversations last year at our district leadership meeting that focused on the facilities of Douglas and Lincoln. We talk about all facilities at the district leadership team, but we did spend some time highlighting Douglas and Lincoln, talking about needs that we might have for the facilities and plans for Douglas and Lincoln in the future. One of the things last year that was loosely discussed was the topic of restructuring. So it's been a conversation that's happened on and off for quite a while in the district, but the idea of putting all of our grades in the same building, so preschool in one building, kindergarten and first grade in the other building. So that conversation started last year, and it kind of ramped up again this year, just from us noticing some needs that our students have, some barriers that we need to overcome, things that we need to address to help our students. So the conversations continued. We had a huge process this year of collecting input, starting to look and see what the viable options were. And last night we proposed to the school board that we would like to put all of preschool into Douglas and kindergarten and first grade into Lincoln, beginning 26-27 school year.
Gotcha. So to take us back, you said this has been going on for about a year or so. Mrs. Jensen, Mr. Goebel, do you want to kind of give us a history of how this conversation got started, where it stems from?
Well, and Kara can jump in, but the idea of combining grades, I would say goes back even before Mr. Nettles, going back to Dr. Holmes, a couple superintendents ago. Even Beth Wickenhauser, the principal, before Jessica. This is not a new idea, and So I feel like we've been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, and not just the three of us, but I think we got to the point where we need to stop talking about it and we need to start doing it.
Right. And I would say the reason that it gets brought up is because concerns were being brought to the table. And so in order to problem solve those concerns, we had to have conversations about that restructuring. So some of the concerns that continually were brought up were class sizes. So right now, Lincoln's class sizes are larger and Douglas's are not so much. So that staff, I mean, to have a difference, and I think one of our teachers mentioned it last night, to have a class size of 19 is very different than a class size of 25. And the amount of what you can do educationally also is different. So also looking at the amount of students that we serve, maybe in special education or in interventions, that was inequitable. And so as the concerns were continually brought up, we have to start problem solving. We have to start looking at solutions. And really the solution that has the best outcomes in student achievement is the restructuring.
So where do you start with that process when you start to say, hey, we have to address this? Where does that conversation begin?
Sure. And Jessica can speak to some of that informal conversation she had, as well as what went into next steps.
Sure. So how about Mrs. Patrick? Where do we start with that?
It started district leadership, like I said, at the beginning of the year, when we just kind of go from one table to one table of here's the concerns coming our way. We work as a team. Let's problem solve this. So I took the concerns and the discussions had at district leadership back to my buildings. We have a building leadership team who has worked on this quite often. We also have grade level team meetings. So I meet with each grade level once a month, teams in both buildings. And we just had a conversation back in October. And I said, here are the concerns that are coming to me, concerns that you guys collectively have. Let's just brainstorm. Let's just think big picture, out of the box. What are some things that we could do with the existing facilities that we have to improve? And then we just started working our way down the list.
Gotcha.
And then we also started looking at, okay, how would these options, the several options were thrown out before we landed where we did. And we looked at how would this option affect things like staffing, schedules, what would we need to add to our facilities or change in our facilities? How does this affect things like food service and transportation? So we really looked at a lot of options across the board, and then also the viability of each option before we landed on the one that we did last night, because out of all the options, it was the most viable, but it also would have the most impact on our students.
Well, and I venture a guess along the way, you're wanting to gauge your staff and the community about how they feel about this. Speak to that process.
Of course, that is a key part of this whole process, is we want to make sure we have as much input and feedback as possible. So staff have completed several surveys. So they have helped me compile a list of all of their concerns, things that we need to consider, really kind of crowdsourcing what are the things that we need to look at throughout this process. And all along the way as we move into this plan, we also had an informational night for our Douglas and Lincoln families to explain what it is that we're thinking about and potentially proposing. And then we invited their feedback as well, which the parent feedback was overwhelmingly positive. I was really excited to see how excited they were for a potential change. They were very supportive.
Do you mind if I ask what were some things you heard from the community? What were some things that you heard from staff? And not necessarily like super specific, but like predominant feelings.
I would say overall, the family feedback, they expressed concern in just our ability to address a lot of logistics. They were very aware of all the logistics that we would have to look at. Things like how this affect arrival and dismissal, transportation, lunch and recess times, and just making us aware that they understand how much goes into that planning process. But they also pointed out a lot of benefits, and their perspective is really essential and crucial because they're looking out for their child. So they're coming at it very child-centered. So a lot of parents highlighted the benefits it has for their child as far as developing peer relationships. A lot of our students might have friends that they have on the baseball team and from this team, but then they go to a different school because of where they live in town.
Right.
And they've expressed that it's really difficult for their kids to create and maintain friendships because that division is there. The division of the boundary line between Douglas and Lincoln was something that those parents brought up as well, because a lot of our parents dealt with the same stigma as children, that one school might be better than the other. And they were very eager for that stigma to disappear for their child.
Yeah, for sure. And that was one when you brought that up last night, Mrs. Jensen. Like that is very much a thing. And like you said, you heard that in your feedback. From your staff side of things, what were their concerns? What did they have to say?
Staff also did a great job of recognizing a lot of benefits. They understand that it would help increase collaboration and address class sizes and give us a lot more flexibility to do things based on what students need and not based on what we have available at a given building at a given time. But also had a lot of legitimate concerns, a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotions come with something of a change this size. So although they highlighted some benefits, there are definitely some concerns to address. Things like parking. What does this look like for the schedule? What does this look like for how many teachers might be working at a room at a specific time? It really just kind of gave us a list of things to start working on and addressing through this process.
Yeah. Mrs. Jensen, from a curriculum perspective, what will be the benefits of this combination?
So really it is about that equity of resources. So we have a lot of split staff between buildings. And so we don't have the ability right now to split their schedules by student need. We split their schedules by the day. And so while one building may have a higher need than another in maybe in areas such as social emotional learning, whether that be special education, right now we're guided by just that person being at 50% of the building. So that's number one, would be able to then create equity among those resources, housing everyone in one building. The other pieces of that is really, you're right, down in curriculum. So when our teachers are able to collaborate together, especially headed into a new reading adoption this year, that's going to play out exponentially for our students. So being able to learn from each other, be able to lesson plan together, and really also have students have similar experiences then. So if I'm in Mrs. Patrick's room or I'm in Mrs. Jensen's room, we are all aligned in what we are teaching. Not the lessons are the same, not my flair for what I'm doing is the same, but we have a similar alignment, and that is better done when we're all together.
Sure. Mrs. Patrick, you can speak to this, I'm sure, as well, just that having to run from one building to the other for you and for other staff members. Speak to that challenge.
I think that was also a change that started driving this conversation is like, obviously I had a split schedule last year and moving into this year, but some things we realized last year, moving into this year, the needs of our students change. So that meant a lot of changes happened to staff schedules, and we now have more staff that have split schedules this year than last year. So they also kind of started realizing just sometimes it is really difficult trying to balance your time at both buildings because you're trying to be responsive to what the building needs, to what the students need. So it just kind of added to the brainstorming process of what are some ways that we can start addressing this. And that's just kind of snowballed. Like that kind of positive change is very contagious. So although we're talking about this big change that will be coming in 26, 27, we're also looking at what are some smaller changes that we can start implementing right away next year that has immediate impact on students, kind of coming before the big change in 26, 27.
Right. And one thing I was thinking just a minute ago, Mr. Goebel, is that, Clinton is small enough that to divide the schools by boundary, you can eliminate that and still be in good shape.
Yeah, and a lot of, to that point, a lot of schools have moved away. What we have right now, they're called neighborhood schools. And Clinton had even, I think, going back the fourth, and there's a 4th and 5th grade neighborhood school or so what we will have at this point is an attendance center, and that is going away from neighborhood schools to attendance center across. I think a couple years ago, Lincoln, Illinois, did that, and Prairie Central. So what we're doing is not new. If anything, we are now going to be, I guess, more in line with what other towns of our size are doing. Clinton is not a large enough town to have neighborhood schools.
Right. Yeah. And maybe at one point they were, because we had 2 more buildings in this district.
Well, so much has changed.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And with busing and transportation and everything, and kids used to, more kids maybe would have walked to school, and it's time. It's time to no longer have a neighborhood school and put all the first graders and kindergartners together something. By doing this, we will be able to expand our preschool programming. And they could probably talk about that. But right now, if you want to be in preschool, you can't. And if you don't qualify, and there's different reasons why you can get in, why you can get out, and all that. But when we do this, anybody that wants to be in preschool can be in preschool. And that's a huge thing.
That is a huge thing. I'll tell you what, ladies, let's take a time out and talk more about that and how we landed on this plan that we came up with on the other side of the break. Again, our guest in studio this morning is Superintendent of Clinton Schools, Drew Goebel, Curriculum Director, Kara Jensen, and Clinton's Douglas and Lincoln Schools Principal, Mrs. Jessica Patrick, following up the Tuesday night Clinton Board of Education meeting. More to come with them on the morning show.
WHOW.
Let's check the opening numbers now at the Chicago Board of Trade on this Wednesday. Jim Taylor, RFD Radio Network. A steady start for corn, beans, and Chicago wheat. May corn opening $4.58 1/4, down half a penny. July corn down 1 1/4. 466 3/4, and new crop December 452 1/2, down 1 3/4. May beans starting today 10.10, down 2 3/4. July beans down 3, 10.23 1/2, and new crop November 10.12 1/2, down 3. May Chicago wheat 565 3/4, up 3/4. July wheat up half a penny, 582 1/2, and September wheat 599 1/4, up half a penny. May bean meal $298.60, that's down $1.30. May bean oil $42.50, down 4 cents. Opening numbers at the Chicago Board of Trade on this Wednesday morning. Jim Taylor, RFD Radio Network.
Good morning. I'm Helen Michelasi, and I'm running for mayor of Clinton. I believe our city has a lot of recreational opportunities for people of all ages, skill levels, and abilities. My experience in grant writing, program development and expansion, and leadership abilities will benefit Clinton. We'll develop a plan to enhance and expand the recreational opportunities in our city. Clinton is a great city, and when we all work together, we can move Clinton forward together.
Paid for by Michelasi for Mayor.
SIU Family Medicine wants the best health for you and your family. Be a champion. Protect your loved ones. The SIU Center for Family Medicine of Lincoln is accepting new patients. Click their icon at DeWittDailyNews.com to schedule your appointment.
Hi, I'm Brett with Central Cremation Center, and we proudly serve all of Central Illinois. We offer the most affordable and convenient arrangements in the area with plans starting at just $795. Many of our plans are available by clicking our icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Again, my guest in studio today, Mr. Drew Goebel, is the Superintendent of Clinton Schools, Kara Jensen, the Curriculum Director for Clinton Schools, and Lincoln and Douglas Principal, Jessica Patrick, as we follow up the Tuesday night Clinton Board of Education meeting, where the Board of Education gave the green light to moving forward for restructuring of Lincoln and Douglas schools. And so, Mrs. Jensen, Mrs. Patrick, I am curious, how did we end up at, it's going to be what, pre-K in Lincoln, no, Douglas School, and pre-K and first grade at Lincoln School? How did we end up there?
Well, we really looked at the feedback that was given, as well as, though, the facilities. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about the location, there is more facts that drive that decision rather than location. Mm-hmm. So one thing that we wanted to do was really look at what is going to be most beneficial to our programming. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, in pre-K, we have students who come to us who are not necessarily toilet trained yet. Mm-hmm. And so in order for our pre-K students to be able to serve those students, having bathrooms inside the classroom is really important.
Oh, okay.
And so at at Douglas, we have 4 classrooms with 4 bathrooms inside, okay? Mm-hmm. However, at Lincoln, we only have 2. Mm. So right there, that fact drives a lot of what we need to do. Okay. And so when we look at also, let's say, arrival and dismissal, that is going to be one that will have to be untangled. Yeah. Arrival and dismissal is going to be huge for us. Mm-hmm. And so at one school, there are 3 locations that have pickup and drop-off points, mm-hmm. where the other school has 2. Okay. And so, but I would say also that looking at that, there is a lot of opinion that people still have about the facilities. And so making sure we're hearing all of that feedback and understanding where people are coming from. Our staff are, I would say majority of the staff understand the reason, but still to say 100% are on board with where we are going or some of the questions that they still have, those have to be addressed. And that is the year that we will take to plan. And so that's really important that people are still asking questions. People are still posing those concerns out there so we can problem solve. So I am encouraged by the staff that are speaking up and really encouraging that conversation.
What are some of the other reasons for the shift of like where grade levels are at in certain buildings? Because I feel like to narrow it down to just like the potty training issue, like I feel like there should be more to that. I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
So how about that?
There's a little more to it. I mean, when you're talking about preschool things like potty training, that's a huge factor.
Right.
So that's not something that we could look past. But I think one of the things that we quickly realized when we started looking at feedback and looked at the maps of the buildings and started brainstorming some even more specifically into this process was that honestly, logistically, kindergarten and first grade could be housed at either building and they would be just fine. But really that Douglas was the more appropriate choice for preschool and their specific needs. Like Ms. Jensen said, the bathroom factor is a huge piece and arrival and dismissal is another huge piece. But needs of our preschool program is something that we also had to consider. So our preschool compliance for our Preschool for All grant, that's another piece to this puzzle that we had to look at is currently neither one of our playgrounds at Douglas or Lincoln is compliant for our preschool grant. We have a fantastic preschool program. We currently are gold status for where we are, but there are still some compliance issues that we have to address when it comes to like facility things that we need to address in order to maintain our gold status. The playground is one of those pieces. Yeah. So if we were considering we need to replace our playgrounds in order to be preschool compliant. At Douglas, we have an older playground, and at Lincoln, we have a newer playground that was designed for 5 to 12-year-olds, so really geared towards the older students. So if we were going to replace a playground, we felt like it was more fiscally responsible to replace an older playground rather than replacing a newer playground. Yeah. So that was another piece to it as well.
Is with the year ahead of planning, is there the chance that we say, you know what, we could get away with Douglas hosting, first and second, and Lincoln School hosting pre-K, or are we pretty set on where things are at?
I think right now we're pretty set on preschool at Douglas and K1 at Lincoln. We recognize that there are some changes that we might have to make to each facility to make it better suited for those grades, but we've spent a lot of time looking, again, like I said, at the viability of each option.
Gotcha. Well, and tell me a little bit, because a big piece of this is, like Mr. Goebel mentioned at the end of the first segment, is the expansion of the pre-K program and essentially giving everyone a green light in Clinton that wants to be a part of that, the ability to do so. Speak to that a little more.
And that also speaks to the community needs and involvement. And preschool is a huge factor for them. So right now our Preschool for All program is an at-risk program, which means that students have to qualify to be in our preschool program for a variety of reasons. Usually we have to identify a certain need that they might have, like speech or any other kind of early interventions, and that's how they qualify to be in our program. So the spots to be in the program are fairly limited, which means that we don't currently have a spot for every kindergartner that we have coming into the program. A lot of those students go to private preschool or something different than that, or they're staying at home with someone, or they don't have any kind of preschool. So being able to expand our program and offer more spots to benefit all of our incoming kindergartners, that's going to have a ripple effect. That's going to benefit them for many, many, many years to come. So that's something that will be eventually felt widespread throughout the district. Sure. So one thing that we had to do in order to begin expanding that is show that we have the facility to expand into, which would give us being at Douglas would give us that. We could show that we have this space to expand, we have the capacity to expand, and then we can start adding programming to that.
Yeah, gotcha. So with that said, did I miss anything, Mrs. Jensen, Mrs. Patrick, from your perspective on this change, where we're going, how we got here? Did we miss anything in that conversation?
There's definitely a lot of pieces to it, but I think those are the big ones.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll be getting updates as this goes along and where we're headed. Mr. Goebel, very quickly, I've got about a minute. I know you mentioned this is kind of the beginning of a broader facilities plan that the district is taking on. Speak to that if you don't mind.
Yeah, like right now, Lincoln and Douglas, they were both built in like the 50s. I think like Douglas was like the late 50s and Lincoln was like the 60s. But both schools are at that 80 years old point. I think they are both fine facilities. They're air conditioned. We have. A couple years ago, we put surveillance cameras in there just for safety, and so both buildings are in good shape. However, the bigger picture down the road, and we shared this last night at the board meeting, is to build a new school, and then we won't have everyone will just be together. But there are so many pieces that would go into that. And what I would like to do, and typically when you build a building, it would increase taxes. I have a plan that would not do that.
Sure. Very good. Well, guys, I got to let you go. Mr. Drew Goebel, Kara Jensen, and Mrs. Jessica Patrick in studio with us. Network News is now.
The Big 1520 WHOW Clinton, 92.3 FM, W222 BG Clinton, 106.5.